All right, well, good evening, everyone. My name is Mykai Eastman, and this is the Arts and Conversation podcast. We have a very special treat for you today because I have some of the greatest technicians I've ever met in my life, and I'm able to have them all in the same place to talk about what they do with each other. We have Kelly Collins, Kelsey Forero, and Dana Sokolov. I want to thank you all first and foremost for taking time out of your evenings to sit here and just talk. But mostly, I just want to get a feel for how you guys doing, especially with this unfortunate pandemic that we happen to be in. But what is making you currently tick and what you do with technical theater? Anyone can start off first.
I'll start off right off the bat. I'm doing pretty okay, pandemic-wise. I'm currently studying at North Carolina School of the Arts, but since classes kind of finished, I've just been chilling at home here in North Carolina. And right off the bat, something that makes me take about technical theater, I guess, is something that I love seeing in this group is that all of us are women and that women get incredibly underrepresented in the technical theater field. And I feel like it's something that'd be worth discussing.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So just to answer your question, Makai, kind of where I am right now is, as you know, just before the quarantine and pandemic kind of hit the wall. I came home from working on a Carnival cruise ship as a technician for 5.5 months. So I came home March 5th, and lockdown began, I believe, the 15th. So I kind of just came home and quarantine, and I'm at home with my parents now. And we'll see what happens with the summer at Glimmerglass. But yeah, I'm doing okay. And just to keep myself going, I've re-downloaded Vectorworks to try to teach myself that a little more. But yeah, I also all group of women, because powerful women in theater is, something that inspires me all the time, and is what keeps me going, is the female representation that I feel is needed in our field.
I love that. I'm really excited about that too. And Makai didn't tell me too much about like what would be going on with the podcast today, and the people that we would be meeting tonight. So I agree. I am very excited that it's all women as well. In terms of pandemic, unfortunately, I was gonna be contracted to work in Venice Theater in Venice, Florida, not Italy or California. I teach technical theater there over the summer to students who are younger, so anywhere between 8 and 18 essentially. And yesterday I got that unfortunate call that I think a lot of people have received and have been dreading about, the camps closing for the summer.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't get to see my students, which is a shame because I love working there. And I am definitely disappointed that I won't be teaching. I understand why it is happening because of the safety precautions and protocols associated with COVID-19, but I don't know, selfishly, I have to say I am disappointed. But in terms of what's making me tick, I'm excited. I've been really excited to see what's been going on via like all of the things online. I think that theater people in general are being really innovative and creative lately, and that's been really cool to witness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you all noticed that you're all women because I don't know, something that I've really come to understand is that out of the greatest technicians that I've ever met, it's really just been women. And it was funny because Dana and I actually spoke about this a little bit this summer, is the lack of representation of women in technical theater, which was astounding to me, to say the least, because every single production that I've been on has been a majority of women. Even even like theater programs and things like that. It's really just an onslaught of women, and I can really speak for University of Tampa. How often we get men in the department is very slim. So I guess I want to ask about your personal experiences as being women in theater and whether or not representation or finding your voice has been a challenge for you thus far.
I can start off again. So when it comes to that, I do work in lighting. I am a lighting designer as of right now. But in the past, I have worked in various other forms, like I've done stage management, stagehand, things like that. And it's really interesting to see where the dynamic of being a woman differs from being a man in certain fields, essentially. Like some people believe that if you are a woman stage manager, you will be either more respected more or that people will take you more seriously. However, if you are a woman and you are a stagehand and you're doing a load in for a show, a lot of guys will technically try to step over you, try to, take road cases away from you saying, oh, don't hurt yourself, I'll push that for you, or something else. So it just really depends on what work you do. But in the end, women do get treated entirely differently solely for our gender, and that should not necessarily be the case.
Man, it drive me nuts.
It really does. It's so bad.
Can I just say, I don't know if this is too informal, but I am so excited that I have the opportunity to get a chance to talk with other women in technical theater, because I feel like a lot of the times I'm surrounded by so many men. And I mean, it's great, and don't get me wrong, I don't want to come off the way I guess that sounds like. I work with so many excellent men in technical theater and very competent and great at their craft people in general, and women, of course. But God, there are more times that I can count where some man has stepped in front of me with a drill, like the road case thing, or if I give a direction, if it's corrected or challenged, it happens more frequently than I would, in full transparency, than I would really like to admit. I feel like sometimes I really have to fight to get my point across, which is a challenge within itself sometimes. But I don't know, I think once you become a little more established in a place that you're working and you get your grounding, it's a little bit easier. But at the same time, I don't know, it's definitely something that's always in the back of my head, and thinking about with a gender difference. Absolutely.
Yeah. Definitely. I kind of feel that in situations, I have found myself actually, I mean, as we all have, in situations where you're surrounded by mostly men working around you, even especially on Carnival, I was the only woman on the team, and that was difficult but also fun. But it was also kind of always, you have to feel like you're proving yourself, which is the really hard part, that you're always striving to prove that you can do the same job, I had this one experience when you were talking about pushing road cases. So when I worked on the ship, we had a cruise that was rented out by a heavy metal convention. And so there's all these rocker dudes. They had their own crew come on too, and the Carnival crew were just sort of there to help them. And I went into you're pushing road cases from onto the ship and onto the stage. And so Mykai went to full op, let's get this done. And I'm going case after case, just pushing them up one after the other, going super fast. And then this one guy tries to jump in front of me and say can you handstand? I'm like, yeah, I'm good, I've been doing this for 15 minutes. And he just walked in the room. And and then I just keep going, and I'm not letting him take it because I'm doing great. I'm like, you grab your own, there's a whole pile of them over there. And then he says to me, damn, you're a persistent little one. And I was like, all right. and yeah, so that I feel is just the example that it's unexpected that we're gonna do a good job, yes. A lot of the time. But with that said, I have had some really good experiences working with the men around me and in whole teams. It's not about, when it's a good team, it's not about the gender, it's about communication and working together that is appreciated around.
Exactly. And that's kind of how it should be. There shouldn't necessarily need to be that dynamic of oh my goodness, there's a woman on the team, how is that going to work? Mm-hmm. One time I was working for a company that I will not name, but we were essentially working a load in. And so I was bringing in a bunch of stuff, things like road cases, truss, and all this other stuff. And something that actually kind of astounded me was that one person, I was hammering something into some truss, and someone said, step aside, sweetie, I got it. And the amount of men that came to my defense when that happened, though, honestly gave me a little bit of hope in society. Because the guy said that, and then about 2 men said, "Whoa, why are you calling her sweetie for? Like, what's your problem?" He's like, "No, I just meant it as a compliment." And they were like, "You don't have to call her that. She does have a name." And I'm like, "Thank you, guys." So there are select good people, but at the same time, there are just some people that, you know, say that it's a traditionalist thing, that they were just raised to treat women differently. But at the same time, it is 2020, so like, wake up. So hopefully, just as time goes forward, people will learn to start respecting more people, and no matter what industry they are in or what they're doing. You know, I still think it's kind of silly that think like jobs that are a lot more like either hands-on or nitty-gritty, like electrician and like things like that, is considered more of like a man's job versus something lighter, like a designer would be a woman. I've actually got that quite a bit at my school. That is our current dynamic, actually. Most of our designers are women and most of the electrician are men. So it's just, I don't know. I would love to break up the system.
Yeah.
I also ask because, Kelsey, you mentioned something very interesting about how the dynamic seems to be different when a woman's a stage manager versus a stagehand or electrician or a deck tech or something like that. And I wanted to kind of touch with Kelly and Dana, since you both stage manage and just been on both sides of the spectrum. Has that been apparent to you by any means? As in, you know, your position in the pecking order, did that have anything to do with how people might implicitly have biases between that?
I don't know if I'm gonna exactly answer this question, but I'm gonna try. So I guess for me, like, I've worked as a woman, as a stage manager, as an assistant stage manager. I've worked with men who, like, as an assistant stage manager or like as a stage manager, you know, all the combinations you can think of. Like, I've I've been in, you know, those situations. And I think sometimes, in all honesty, it's like the dynamic is different. Sometimes um it's I the style is different, but I guess for me at least, I think it has to do with the person too. So like, I know a way that I would run a rehearsal, or I would run, you know, a production process in general based on who I am, regardless of gender. And I think that has to do with other people I've worked with as well. So I guess in terms of gender, sometimes I see the difference. Like, maybe a stereotype might be like, some people might view me as a little bit more uptight than a man who might be a little bit more relaxed in their job. But at the same time, I try and, I mean, Mykai knows this, my motto is really just like low stress, high success in all situations. So I try to make things easy, but sometimes I feel like maybe because I'm a woman, people think that it comes off a little bit more aggressively or like assertively. Whereas if a man would say it, like, it would just kind of happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
That it does.
It does make sense. I do feel, I mean, it is kind of there's a very fine line being a woman in authority between being known to get stuff done and being stern versus going too far and then people considering you like, you know, a B word or whatever. So it's such a tough line to toe, and it's really difficult as a stage manager or assistant stage manager, when I've been in those positions, to find the sweet spot of getting respect but also not coming across and giving people the illusion that you have bad intentions or something, that you're doing it for your own good, because people often think that if you're trying to have any disciplinary role. So yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to find that sweet spot, but and there also have been times, I mean, so there's that, and then working as a stagehand or a member of a crew, I have often found like just the fact that a lot of times, like, you know, people, like, men tend to be stronger than women, so it's when a man gets chosen to do like a heavy lifting job, it's like expected, but like I would love to be given the shot, you know?
Yeah.
I guess I hope that answers it.
No, it really does. It was just a really interesting topic to think about because I can definitely see it. You know, even if it's not on purpose, but things kind of just tend to happen that way. And that's just how deep rooted the issue may be without even being malicious about it. So I just thought that was a very interesting thing to bring up. Now, kind of shifting more towards the design aspect or the production head things. And I guess, Kelsey, if you want to chime in specific with this, you know, when you do one of the most important aspects of the production, which is, I'm going to say lighting. It's definitely up there because lighting can definitely make or break a show. What is the one thing you would be looking for from the director or from the other designers to be able to make your job that much easier?
When it comes to talking to directors about lighting design, like, of course, the first thing is really just collaboration, communication, that we each kind of get some sort of equal image of what we want the show to look like. When you have a director that becomes a little bit too like forceful with what their image of the show is, like, for example, I guess a way of saying, like, if a director says, hey, I really want to push like this color imagery, and the designers are like, no, we're kind of hoping for something else, like having more of a compromised ground rather than just having just the director go full ham and just kind of ignoring everybody else will significantly make the show better, because everybody's best interest is to get the show looking as perfect as it can be. So just making it more of a collaborative effort is a really huge step, because a lot of directors don't like to do that. A lot of directors kind of like to just kind of keep their vision no matter what, like, and they'll steamroll anybody until they get there. So that's my thoughts on that.
Now, marrying that into production heads, Kelly and Dana, I know you two have definitely worked with more people who have been more of dictators rather than directors, or perhaps people who have led the crew or the design in a very forceful manner to the point where it might be a little difficult to kind of find the balance between collaboration and just following orders. So what would you have to say in terms of how to deal with that from not only a professional standpoint, but only as an artist to keep your integrity in the piece as well?
I mean, yeah, everything is all about communication, collaboration, being open-minded to other people's views. Like, it fully comes down to that, to just being able to share and listen and hear other people out. And if you can't do that, then the project's gonna immediately fail, because it's a team effort 100%. And regardless of a level in the team, the person at the highest level should 100% be willing to hear the concerns of the lowest level and at least compromise or have the conversation. You know, if I've worked with people where that was sort of not taken, there was someone in charge who thought that what they say goes, and didn't care about how it affected, and didn't maybe even recognize how it affected the lower levels and the inner workings and details of the piece. And that just gets very problematic when it's brought to their attention, not listening. It's just, yeah, basic human skills of listening, communication, and stuff. It's just exactly what it needs. Just human connection is what it really comes down to 100% in all working scenarios.
Thank you. I hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's really what it is. I think oftentimes people in theater, as much as I hate to say it, like, sometimes you get a little bit of a big ego in terms of, you know, you being confident in your ability. And as wonderful as that is, sometimes I think it's important for everybody on the team to take a step back and just to say, okay, wait, this isn't about me, it's about the process. Yeah. About the product of the process and what that product can do for other people. So how can what we collaboratively create serve, you know, the playwright? How can it serve the cast? How can it serve the audience? And in order for us to do that, we have to do it together.
Nicely said.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Another question for the whole group, really, because the joy of live theater is the fact that invariably things are more prone to going wrong. And it's the opening night jitters, it's the complacency on the other end of the spectrum when things become too routine. And there's a little bit of this boiling tension, at least that I experience, every time the curtain comes up until it comes down. So, in your own experience, what's something that went wrong or not as planned, and how were you able to adapt and fix it or make it work, per se?
This one is one of my favorite questions, as Mykai knows. I can count the amount of things that have gone wrong in productions that I have worked on my hands and feet and beyond. And as a stage manager, or I think any theater person in general, it is our job to anticipate mistakes. And somehow things still continue to surprise me every time that they happen, but maybe that's what makes it fun. And I think another fun part about it is the solution that you find when something unexpected happens. How can we fix it? I think that's something magical about being someone who's in technical theater. The idea that we have the ability to, create something and fix something so rapidly. An example, perhaps, I think one of the most intense ones, which Mykai, I'm sure, is very familiar with, and I'm positive he knows what I'm going to say, is when I stage managed his production of Angels in America. And I was ready. I was ready to go. I was excited. I knew exactly what I needed to do that night to make that one show, because we had one show of Angels in America, like to get it right, to make sure that it went smoothly. And the very first cue of the show got messed up because, as Mykai identified, sometimes people get jitters. And you can start to say go on a over the headset and it's just like immediate. I didn't even do that. It was a mistake that was made. What the mistake was is irrelevant. But the point is, something happened, and it was something that was unfixable because there were multiple cues that were set off of that very first cue. So what could I do in that situation? Not too much. And because of that initial mistake, everyone on the tech team was immediately tense after that. And I think as a stage manager, when something like that happens, it's very important to reaffirm your technicians that are on your headset to be like, okay, this happened. Now we're going to move forward, which I've made very clear while it was going on, to try and prevent mistakes from continuing to happen. So at the end of Act 1, there were a lot of things that I could have done. I could have yelled at the technicians on my team. I could have been upset. But what purpose would that serve me, and what purpose would it serve them? If I walked backstage and screamed at someone for getting something wrong, or if I yelled at a technician in the booth, like, number one, it's just not my style. That's not the way that I go about conflict in general. So it wouldn't have worked out very well for me. I wouldn't have handled that well. And I think that when you create negative energy, the negative energy persists. So instead, what I did was I walked backstage and I told my entire crew that they could come stand in a circle with me. And we grabbed hands and we breathed. And we said, all right, in, hold, and out. And then we talked and we said, focus is important, and mistakes happen and they can't continue to happen. So we are a team and we're going to move forward. We're going to use this as a learning experience, and we're going to get back out there and get back on our game. And after that, Act 2 and Act 3 went swimmingly. So I think that the way that you talk to people, the way that you interact with people, and the way that you deal with issues in the moment can affect a lot of other things. And I think if we use positivity and kindness to solve problems, and I think this is general, not just in the theater or technical theater, it serves us a lot better than if we were to get upset or to get angry about something.
I agree. Honestly, with things in theater, we kind of forget sometimes that we're all human. people make mistakes, things will happen, things will go wrong. That is literally the joy of theater. It's everything going wrong and you troubleshooting as soon as possible. And even things also outside of theater. An issue that I had this like past semester, I was working on a production, but a personal issue came up for me that was outside of the production. And unfortunately, it inhibited me to be able to do work. But rather than, you know, I was assistant lighting designing at the time, rather than my lighting designer getting angry, being like, why didn't you do this? Or what's going on? Or blah, blah, blah. He was like, okay, breathe, focus on what you need to do to make yourself better in this moment in time. And then we'll try to move forward. And that's how understanding people should actually be with these kinds of things, because things do happen. And sometimes we're not always going to be on our A game, but rather than, you know, getting either yelled at or feeling guilty for being human, all we can do is just try to grow ourselves and make ourselves into better people, learning from what we already have and just pushing forward. So, yeah.
Yeah. Like you were saying, Kelly, it's so important to breathe through the times of stress and everything. When you all, like you said, negative energy persists and it creates such horrible vibes, and that's not a place to create art and theater. So I'm gonna tell a story. I think it's a funny one. I mean, kind of, I don't know, we'll see. So my last semester in college, I was assistant directing our production of Our Country's Good, a fun play. And the lead actress, she got sick midway through the beginning of the show, probably only like 10 to 15 minutes in. And I was sitting in the house watching, and the director came on stage and he announced, so our lead actress has fallen ill, and our our wardrobe supervisor is going to hop in. She's been an actress before, and she's just going to do what she can with the role. And it was so fun, and I think the best part in Think Going Wrong is how people come together. Immediately when that happened, I knew I jumped backstage, and I was going through the script for and kind of explaining to her the blocking between scenes that she had to go on for. And the stage manager, you know, adjusted and had to, you know, go figure out the little details of things, and just how everyone communicated and made it possible for her to take over in a role midway through the show. It was just so wonderful watching her being able to do it, and everyone I saw, the whole crew coming together to make it possible. And, you know, and the other wardrobe crew had to step up to be able to cover her track backstage. So just so much had to happen to make that swap possible mid-show. And that's just one example of how it's really great when even there are flubs, how as technicians and as trained theater artists, we 100% know we just have to get on our game and figure it out, and hold, like, whether it's like metaphorically or actually hold hands and get through it.
I think the persistence and dedication of theater people, like, it just never ceases to amaze me.
Yeah.
So many different situations in which, like, theater prepares you for life itself. And I think that's one major skill that being a technician has taught me. Absolutely, like, I would agree with everything that we talked about. There's so many horror stories that are actually somehow really extraordinary and very magical in some kind of weird backwards way.
That's the truth. Well, we're running just a bit low on time here, so I want to have just a quick little powwow session for you all to give any budding technician out there / designer / theater artist in general. If you had to give one little piece of advice from your little experiences, what would you tell them?
My biggest lesson is always pay attention to detail. So regardless of what you're doing, just if you're sending out an application, reread it 100 times, you know, like, especially right now, it's hard. People are out of work, and it's hard to know the next step for a lot of us now. So it's all in the organizing, planning, and we're taught that in all our classes. I'm sure we went in school for theater and whatnot. But yeah, it's just my biggest lesson was always pay attention to detail, organize yourself before you can organize your work life, and you'll go far.
I would agree with that for sure. And similarly, I think my main lesson is that when a door closes, a window opens. So in theater and technical theater in general, sometimes something happens, and I don't know, I guess I'm just a believer in the fact that everything happens for a reason. And when well, maybe not everything happens for a reason, but there is a lesson that we can learn from all things that happen, I think is a better way to say that. Yeah, I guess that the takeaway is sometimes opportunities come knocking and you get to decide when you take advantage of those. But otherwise, my other thing would probably be put people first. People first is always the mentality of what I do.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Personally, I think my big lesson would be that progress is not linear. As you are progressing through your career, you will have so many ups and downs. Things will change. I started fully doing theater a few years back, but I didn't really switch into lighting until this past year. I didn't envision myself moving to North Carolina to study lighting design fully. People's trajectory in lives change even after you get a degree. If you get a degree, heck, for some things you don't even need a degree. It depends on what you do. All it is just do what you love and the rest will follow. Just kind of follow that first. And there will be ups and downs, but just don't give up, keep going, and your dream will follow too.
Beautifully said. Well, with that, that's Kelly Collins, Kelsey Forero, and Dana Sokolov, 3 of the greatest technicians I've ever met. Be sure to hire them, because if you don't, I surely will. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.